Hello, I'm Holly Hancock, and I am a candidate for Judicial seat number 60 in Los Angeles County. Today, I'm having a conversation with my cousin, jazz legend Herbie Hancock, at his home. And we're going to be talking about the criminal justice system and some of the reforms. So, Herbie, we were talking earlier. We started out talking about capital punishment.
Right.
Because you said that was a concern of yours and that you were not for it. We've had several, at least twice, we've had ballots on the measure to get rid of it. So where are you coming from when you think about that?
I would have thought that California would be listed among those states that had abolished capital punishment, but it hasn't. I'm actually kind of surprised. But my feeling is that a person that has committed a crime, if they're convicted of committing a crime, and it's decided that they would be punished by basically killing them,
Right,
what purpose does it serve?
right.
Does it help the family of the victim? Does it, it certainly isn't going to help the person who committed the crime.
No.
And I think my feeling is that human beings are always worth doing your best to try to rehabilitate them.
And that's what we're talking about today. It led into that concept that, it can't just be punishment. We've had that concept for a long time, and we were saying maybe that's Old Testament thinking.
Oh, yeah.
We've got, New Testament is more let's forgiveness and let's try to heal. So, as you and I were saying, that I had the evidentiary concerns about it because, DNA has come to the forefront. So many people have been exonerated because of that. And, and they were sitting on death row. So think about all the other people who have been convicted of crimes and maybe didn't do it, but there's no DNA.
I mean, it's happened in the past. A lot of people have been wrongly penalized in that way, so they were put to death. But DNA didn't exist then. And who knows, in the future, there may be some newer technologies that develop that could even make it things that somehow bypass DNA testing. Those things could be caught, and we could find that someone has been wrongly convicted. So you never know for sure whether what you've done is to the right person, unless you're there watching them do it.
Right, exactly.
And then, how often does that happen? That
Right.
the judge is there to see that. I think what it really boils down to is how we look at human beings. If we look at human beings as some people are basically evil and some people are basically good,
Right.
we're drawing a line of separation between kinds of human beings. Like one is a lower kind and one is an upper kind.
Right, exactly. And you and I both know that kind of has played into the racial disparity
Exactly.
that exists in our criminal justice system.
That same racial bias is that same kind of foundation for racial bias goes into that kind of thinking. Truth of the matter, and my belief, is that all human beings are both basically bad and basically good.
Okay.
We all have those characteristics. Some may have exhibited the negative forces that we all possess more than the positive forces throughout their lives, or in many situations in their daily life. And some, because of circumstances in their lives, have exhibited more of the positive characteristics. But we all have all of that.
And it has a lot to do with their background, I've represented many people who are teens who age out of the foster care system. They're living on the streets. And they wind up stealing or doing other things. They get involved with drugs, etc., because this is what they're doing in order to try to live, just to try to live.
Right.
So when they come to court, you have to be able to know that people have a different kind of background. It cannot just be they committed this crime, and unfortunately, as the district attorney's office in Los Angeles County it's one of the most incarcerating counties, I have to say, in the country, because California is one of the most incarcerating states in the country. And so this county incarcerates more people than any other county. So
That's sad.
yeah, it is.
That's really sad.
And so one of the changes that has not happened has been capital punishment, but there have been some other voter initiatives throughout the state. And one of those, and you and I discussed, was the mental health diversion.
Right.
And that was just signed into law by Governor Brown. And I'm very excited about that because I've had so many clients who are mentally ill, up to sometimes a third of my caseload. And they are simply put in prison if you are not trying to stop that.
It's a really sad situation. And another part of this equation is now prisons have become a business.
Yes.
Some are privately owned, and the more prisoners they have, the more those who are reaping the financial benefits can get from it. That's a slippery slope. In other words, money can buy whether a person is actually going to be incarcerated or not. That needs to be changed,
Exactly, and that causes the courts and everybody to just simply say it's simple to say just send them to prison. It's simple to do that. It's more difficult to have social workers, to have mental health caretakers, etc., to help people actually kind of get back into the community. But this is what I think. I think that if you are not trying to help that person get back into the community and do it differently next time and be better than they were when they came before the bench, then you're not creating a safe community.
Great. I'm really glad you said that.
Yes.
Because that's so important. I'm so glad that you're looking at it that way. I mean, that's why you need to win.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, yes.
Yeah, we need to have a safe environment. And if all we're doing is exacerbating the problem of criminality, you're doing the opposite. So a lot of things need to be changed in the criminal justice system in general. One other thing that you mentioned to me, Holly, is that you've begun to investigate what happens in other countries.
Yes.
And how they treat the function of their criminal justice system and how successful they are in creating, as you said, a safe environment for the citizens.
What struck me a lot was this concept of reconciliation, partially which I saw came out of Rwanda and the hearings and the criminal hearings that they had after their civil war, basically.
Right.
And they would have people come in, and the victims would be able to come in, and they could speak directly to the, I guess, really the soldiers. I mean, the people who were soldiers at that time.
Right.
And it was so impactful because the soldiers could then hear what they had done and how it had affected people. and the mothers, the children, etc., could speak to them and say, this is what happened between us. Now, we have a little bit of that in our system right now, because they do allow the victims to come in at times and make a statement to the defendant. But I think it was even more impactful because the guys who were soldiers could take ownership of what they've done. And I think that's what we are saying more we need to have in terms of reconciliation, everyone to be reconciled with the incident or what happened. And that's the only way that people can get back into a community, because they had to go back to they were going back to the same country. They were going back to the same community.
Right.
That wasn't changing. And they were but they're going to have to figure out a way to live together.
Absolutely.
And I think it's similar here.
Yeah, that's an educational process.
Right.
To let people see the results of what they've done. See how it has affected another human being. If we think that way, we can develop systems that can take that into consideration and somehow provide that's assistance to rehabilitate the person who's committed the crime. The police system and police departments, just because you wear a badge doesn't mean you're always going to do the right thing either. And in so many cases, we're seeing now, because people have phones that are cameras.
Exactly. And that makes a big difference.
It makes a huge difference that we have documents, which we never had in the past.
Exactly.
To show wrongdoing by either or, by actually the person who is not in the police force, who doesn't have the badge, or the person who does have the badge. And this justice is based off of so much of it is based off of facts and documents, right?
Yes.
So we're finding proof that in a lot of cases, for various reasons, policemen have been wrongly let off for themselves committing crimes against society.
And it can be any number of reasons, just ambition.
Yeah.
Or just the fact that they have power. Everybody who has power doesn't know how to use it.
So, you can say that again.
Yeah. Okay. In a lot of areas in America right today.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And then there's this kind of, from what I've been reading, this kind of protect your buddy system that happens in a lot of police departments.
Exactly. The whole, code of silence.
Code of silence, right.
The whole code of silence. And even sometimes, to the extent that some younger guys, I know some of the younger deputies, when, there were things that were going on in the Twin Towers and this is here in Los Angeles, the city, but in Twin Towers and in the Men's Central Jail, they quit because they didn't feel that they could report some of the things that were going on, but they also didn't feel that they could tolerate staying in that
toxic
situation.
Environment,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. Yeah. So there have been people who have quit.
That's great. And that's admirable.
Right.
That they stood up for what they really believe.
But it's unfortunate that they quit. We didn't find out about it until later. Maybe the LA Times or somebody finally wrote about it. But they, it was unfortunate that that's what they felt they had to do at the time, was just quit.
Yeah, there's a lot of cleanup that needs to be done.
Yes. Absolutely.
And so who gets victimized? Black people again. Who gets put into prisons? Black people. Or who gets put underground? Black people again.
Okay. You're right.
All that needs to be needs to be
We
overturned.
come from Chicago. We thought it was the Midwest that was the tough place where they use the cattle prods and everything. But we came out here and found out, wow, it's kind of just as bad. So
unbelievable.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about too.
Mm-hmm.
I get the feeling that a young kid who's maybe committed a crime, and he gets convicted, and what he learns in prison is more about how to commit crimes.
Some more crimes, yeah. And maybe how to do it sort of better.
Yeah, and how to do it
exactly.
better, right?
Yeah. So there have been some good reforms and I work for the Office of the Public Defender, as you know. And those reforms, and we were at the forefront of really trying to change some of these juvenile justice reforms. And one of them is that unfortunately, again, Los Angeles County DA would direct file, and they called it direct file, but they would put the teens directly into adult court
Right.
for that, whatever the crime was, robbery, murder, attempted murder, shootings, whatever. They put them into adult court, and that means that they would face adult consequences and sentencing. I don't
Why?
know how
How
much
does that
leeway
happen?
the judges had at that point, but that it went on for a long time. But there was a law that was passed to stop that. So now they have to make a petition to get into adult court, and they're still doing that too. But at least they have to go before a judge, and the judge has to make a decision about whether or not they will get into adult court for this kind of crime.
So the prosecutor submits that?
Yes.
I see.
And they still are submitting it. So, they haven't stopped submitting it, but they can no longer say, we choose to go to adult court.
Yeah.
So that's a big change that's very impactful, and it also has to do with what judge are they in front of in the juvenile system. So, it's really important, some of these changes, because the judges are the ones who are now making more of the decisions as opposed to the prosecutor.
Oh, I see. What reasons will they have for submitting a document trying to get the juvenile put into the adult court?
Well, they will say that the crime is heinous enough that they should be treated as an adult. However,
What age, by the way?
it could be up from 14 and up.
Wow.
They've done 14, and I think that's very young. And you and I were talking about, it's really about the development of the brain, and the brains don't develop for teens. I have Chloe.
Yeah.
Chloe's like 18. She is 18 now.
Right.
But I do not see her making adult-type decisions, to the full extent that some adult would,
yeah.
somebody in their 20s would. But they've done it, and it goes to the thinking that you were talking about, that people are inherently good or bad, and it doesn't even seem to matter what age they are.
Yeah, that
And
does
if
feed
you
into
have
that.
that belief,
Yeah.
and you don't think that people are still growing and being able to change and become, a different person as they get older, then you're going to say this person is bad
Right.
and they should go to prison. And it's really that thinking. I can't understand it myself other than that, because there's no way your brain is the same at
Right.
14, 18, 21, or even 25.
When a child comes out of the womb, we don't judge whether the child is good or bad. We don't
Right.
say. Evidently, at a certain point, we start to think if what we've observed has been from a child has been primarily bad, then I think maybe that's when this judgmental attitude
Yes.
begins to take place in society in general. And I was just thinking, the title that you're going for is judge.
Yes.
But human beings are so many times more judgmental in situations where being judgmental gets in the way.
Exactly.
It's so much more important to be looking at what has caused, what conditions has the child been exposed to, or a person been exposed to, that perhaps have contributed to this heinous act taking
Right.
place. It doesn't mean that the person's still not responsible for it. It just means that perhaps through a different way of looking at this human being, as because human beings are capable of change.
Absolutely.
Human beings are capable of finding a way to look at themselves as being respect worthy and how important that is, and to realize that other people are respect worthy. And so actions that may have taken in the past can change. People can change for the better.
I love that word you're saying, respect worthy, that they become and grow into being respect worthy. And I think that people have to have possibilities open to them
Absolutely.
so that they can feel respect worthy. You know, particularly juveniles. I mean, I just don't even think you say people can change. I think juveniles are going to change.
Oh, yeah.
It's not even about being an adult and making a decision to change, which we can, but it's really about for juveniles, they are going to change. You know, and it's going to be more about what their situational setting is.
Right.
And are there any possibilities for them? Is there a possibility for growth? So one of the, you know, and again, so that funneling children into the prison system is one of the many things that we also discussed, which was about mass incarceration.
Oh, yeah.
And how that plays into, you know, the racial divide in America, of course, and you know, with black and brown people being mostly the people who are incarcerated. So
Yeah.
I think that, you know, as you were saying earlier, that's a concern of yours. And how do we
big
cut
concern
that
of mine.
down?
Yeah. It really should be a concern of every American.
Yes.
Because if we all want to live in a safe haven, why is it that, I mean, what's the percentage now? It's extremely high of black and brown people being in prisons.
Oh, yes. It's well over, I would say it's over 80% of, if you're going to combine the two and say black and brown, yes, it's well over 80%.
Yeah. And particularly black people.
Yes.
So what does that tell you? I mean, some people may say, oh, it looks like black people are worse or more evil
Yes, that goes into the, you know,
than white people.
nursery school thinking.
Oh, yeah. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. And so, granted, there are circumstances of poverty, lack of education, lack of parental guidance, because maybe one or both parents are either not present or incapacitated for various reasons.
Right.
You know, one parent may already be incarcerated. Another parent may perhaps be a victim of the lives that they have led, and circumstances they've been exposed to.
Exactly.
Drugs could come into play. So many circumstances that are negative forces kind of thrown at them, and this human being has to somehow learn to have enough respect for themselves,
Yes.
enough sense of self-worth that they don't want to commit the same kinds of negative acts that others who they've either seen or been exposed to, or others who have paid a price for it.
Yes.
They don't want to be a part of that equation. And so building up that sense of self-worth and respect for others is responsibility of all human beings. So I was just thinking about the concept of justice. Justice evidently has not really served us as well as it's capable of serving us.
Okay.
And when I say us, I meant human beings in general, and in this case, Americans in general. And certainly, it hasn't served people of color in a way that it should. But so it's a long process since slavery of really kind of equalizing everything in this country.
Yes.
And it gets challenged. It's especially challenged today. So when we talk about respect for all human beings and use that as a foundation of how we're going to, say, reform the criminal justice system, we have to look at all kinds of avenues, including the idea that prisoners themselves cannot be a part of the process of improving the criminal justice system because they can't vote.
That's true. You're right about that.
So they are victimized more once they've been convicted than
Yes.
they were before.
Now, here's something else that kind of will move us into a movement that is going on now, which is the bail reform movement. But what they are allowing people to do, and just recently, I think ACLU and some other groups have started to go into the jails because people are awaiting trial for so long. But they haven't been stripped of their voting rights yet because they haven't been convicted yet.
Oh, right.
So they're going into the jails and allowing them to register and getting them registered and then setting up actual voting areas in the jail so that they can mail it in, I guess, or they collect it and they mail it in some kind of way. So that's another problem with the overcrowding in the jails is that bail is so high. Generally, only the wealthy can pay it. And they have to deal with the bail bondsman if they want to get out. And sometimes the bail bondsmen aren't even concerned about the lower level bails because they're not going to get a lot of money from that. But $1,000, $1,500, that can be a lot for somebody who is just, struggling or just making ends meet. And bail bondsmen won't come out and post bail for that. So people sit in jail for sometimes minor misdemeanors, etc., let alone, the bigger cases, for months, years even.
Why does that even exist?
Right.
The bail system.
It's supposed to, it's supposed to say, you put money up, you'll come back, Now, I don't know that that's always the case. I mean, sometimes people put money up and then they still skip town, That doesn't necessarily mean that for you.
So it's not necessarily that successful.
Right. And it's an old-fashioned concept, of course, that people will only be in their area and so that they will come back. But, people can come back for a lot of reasons. They can come back if they get transportation. Like my clients, from the Office of the Public Defender, sometimes they just don't have transportation to get back to court. Sometimes they don't have child care,
All right.
So that they can come to court. Sometimes they don't have.
Oh, right.
I mean, it's just like the basics.
Yeah.
For people to just be able to get to court. Sometimes they don't have they don't have a phone. They can't, notify me or other people at the, at the courthouse that they can't make it that day or that they will be there later. So bench warrants issue all the time. But it doesn't just have to do with that. It really does have to do with the level of bail, that bail, and there's a new case it's called the Humphrey case. It is being challenged, though. They're going up on appeal on it. But it did state that you should ask the person, the individual, how much can you afford?
Oh,
as opposed to setting just a standard bail, which is usually in the tens of thousands of dollars. So they are saying, well, how much can you afford? How much will you put up? Because it's what's important to you, the individual. If you put up $500 and that's really important to you, you'll be back so that you can get that back.
so you just ask
Well,
the
that's what we've
person?
been doing. Yeah, we've been just in the last few months in court. I've been, requesting that people be released on their own recognizance, which is for free. And if the judge isn't willing to do that, then I do ask, well, he's able to put up 200, 250 of his own money that he doesn't have to go in a hock to the bail bondsman
Right.
to do. And sometimes they'll consider that as well.
But now, if a person's working, right,
Yes.
there's a certain amount of income. I mean, is that knowledge known?
Well, we
In
can
the court?
get that knowledge, and we do try to get that knowledge. We try to get, that information. We try to get those
That
facts
information.
and present it to the court. We set it for a hearing. We've been calling it a Humphrey hearing after the name of the case. And so we've been trying to get more people out on their own recognizance or on their own cash bail.
I see.
I know that in some of the felony courts, they have been releasing them with the anklet. At least they've been releasing them with the anklet.
I was thinking about that too. Yeah.
They didn't used to do that because you used to have to pay so much for it. But they have been releasing them with the anklet in certain cases as well. And this is basically so that people can go and keep their jobs,
All right.
so they can, and continue to work, and so that they are not separated from their families
Right.
pre-trial.
Right.
Because you haven't proven that the person they're supposed to be presumed innocent, right?
Right. And the family shouldn't have to suffer.
Exactly. And kids suffer, spouses suffer, believe me, they do, because many times that is the breadwinner, period.
Right. I mean, there's going to be suffering enough, the fact that this person is in court.
Exactly.
I think that's great, and it sounds like you're all for that way of
Well, I would certainly
some of these
review
things.
it. Yes, I would certainly be open to reviewing it. And, since I'm coming from a position where I represent people,
Right.
not the state of California, but people. And I see how their families are affected. I see how the children are affected, and how families are separated. And as you were saying with mass incarceration, how a parent is gone away to prison for X amount of years, and how that affects the children who are growing up in that scenario.
Right. Now, why is it that criminals can't vote? I mean, why is that taken away from them?
And that's
It's
just
punishment.
a decision. Yeah, it's a punishment, and that's just a decision. And as long as they're on parole, they cannot vote. If they're on probation, they can. But when they're
What does that
paroled,
serve? What good does that do?
They're definitely a citizen, because we're spending money to house them, and we're spending money
It's expensive too.
exactly, it's very expensive. And we're spending money to when they're paroled to maintain them, to manage them, supposedly. We're spending money to do that.
Right.
So it's something that's going on. I don't see why that would affect their all the the living laws that are out there. There are many laws out here, not just criminal laws. Many laws are out here. They should be able to vote for those.
They absolutely should be able to. First of all, they are citizens, and if you remove this archaic concept of punishment and think more in terms of how can we, again, rehabilitate this
Right.
human being so that they can function as a positive force in society and move society forward, even though they were part of the putting the brakes on forward motion before. That's something that the criminal justice system could be proud of.
I agree.
But at this point, so much of it, all it's done is to be a part of putting the brakes on the possibility of another human being being able to be a force for forward motion and a positive future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've been. You had an album called Possibilities,
Yes.
and a book,
Yes.
and I have said often that that is my concept around which I am a candidate. I'm a candidate for possibilities.
Right.
I'm a candidate for rehabilitation, bringing people back to the community more whole than they left the community. So, Herbie, I wanted to thank you so much for sitting down and talking to me and just giving me your time. This is very heartwarming for me that you have done this, and I thank you very much.
And I want to thank you, Holly, because
Okay.
you're going to make a difference, a positive difference, and be a force to encourage others in the criminal justice system, and particularly in the judicial system, to perhaps rethink how they were thinking before, and leading toward more of people that have the kinds of ideas that you've been expressing to me.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining us. Again, I'm Holly Hancock, and this was a conversation with my cousin Herbie Hancock, and I am a judicial candidate in seat 60, Los Angeles County, and I look forward to getting your vote on November 6th.